Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to have to ask a question to our organizers, actually, in terms of what goes next. And the next is the winner of the first draw. So I don't know, for those of you seen, Garmin is one of our sponsors. And I am pleased to announce the first winner of the very first draw. That means if you haven't had a chance to put your card in, you have another opportunity. There will be a second draw just before the end of the day. And I'm pleased to announce that the winner is Matt Morawski. Is he here? Yay! Come on up, Matt. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
On your card. No speech, no worries. No stress. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I just want to check. We have a slight change to the agenda. So we're going to be moving on from, we talked about FinTech earlier today, and we actually, I said I would share a FinTech factoid each time. So the first FinTech factoid was every 10th startup FinTech in the world is Swiss. And it's very easy to remember, 10% of the world's FinTechs are from Switzerland as well. So there you go. Pleased to introduce our next speaker. Very excited, actually, and special to have Raphael Kons, who's the Economic Promotion Manager for the Office of Economic Affairs and Innovation for the state of Vaud. Many of you remember the innovative video we had in the beginning as well. So he has really helped with innovation in Vaud, as well as startups for SMEs, and as you can see from many startups who are around. And obviously, he's been very active also as board director, spending many decades in this segment. So thank you very much. Over to you, Raphael.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. So thank you for coming to Lausanne. For those who are from other cantons or the region or from other countries. So the idea, you had a first dive into our ecosystem with our movie before. I would like just to give you some facts and figures about our innovation and startup ecosystem here in Canton of Vaud. And for sure, we are there with a part of my team to answer any question if you would like to know more about the opportunities here in Vaud. So, as usually for any innovation ecosystem in the world rely on 5 pillars. I would like to go into each of these pillars and to explain a bit what are the elements that compose our ecosystem here. So, first fact, first number, 80,000, is the number of students, researchers, the number of professors, so all the community of academic and research talents that is present in our region. So it's roughly 10% of the total population of Vaud that is involved either in the academic or research field. So why it is important? We have roughly 20 universities in different fields, technology for EPFL. We also have technology at Yverdon, at the University of Applied Sciences. We have design with the ECAL. We have hospitality management with the EHL, the University of Lausanne, the University Hospital of Lausanne, the CHUV. So all together, this research and academic institution provide a pool of talent, provide scientific expertise, and give us the opportunity in Canton of Vaud to provide transdisciplinarity and to provide convergence of technologies, of expertise. And this is why we more and more focus our economic development policy towards innovation domain, innovation niche, such as AI, machine learning, agri-tech, food tech, blockchain. So all these roughly 15 innovation domains are very well represented in Canton of Vaud in terms of talents, which is important more and more for the companies. Then 500. 500 is the number of startups that compose our ecosystem. Every year, there are roughly between 50 to 70 new startups coming out from our academic research institution or getting established in our canton as spin-off also of corporates. Among the different awards and the different ranking, the top 100 Swiss startups ranking is also quite interesting to see that 26 startups come from Vaud, and among the top 10 we have 4 startups also in different fields. So this transdisciplinarity of our expertise also is present in terms of activities of our startups. 6,000 is the number of jobs that have been created by the scale-up. So we say that we have roughly 500 startups, and 10% of these startups are scale-up companies. So in Canton of Vaud, thanks to our innovation promotion agency, Innovo, that created the Scale-up Vaud platform. The Scale-up Vaud is a platform fully dedicated for companies that are scaling up. Scaling up means the companies that have an increase of more than 20% of their turnover and in terms of jobs creation for a period of 3 years. So these companies have created 6,000 jobs. They are, here are these 43 companies in also many fields: cybersecurity, in oncology, in AI and machine learning, in food tech, agri-tech. So I don't want to go in details. You probably have heard at least a few of them. They are usually and often in the newspapers, but it's just to say that's very important, because if you think that this only 40 companies have created 6,000 jobs in less than 10 years, it means that the diversification of our economy and the new opportunities to develop our economy is given thanks to this kind of company. This is also why we pay attention in Canton of Vaud to this type of company. 600 million, it's the number or the amount of capital that has been invested in Vaud-based startups, but in total in Switzerland last year, it was roughly 3 billion. So also an exponential increase of the level of investments made in our Swiss startups, and as well as the number of rounds that has been negotiated since the last 10 years. You can see that it's an exponential also growth, and in Canton of Vaud, we are representing roughly 25–30% of this total amount, which means for 2021, 600 million, and plus 3 IPO, which was also a good, I would say, success last year. 2 companies in life science, Sophia Genetics, Onward Medical, and 1 company in the field of aerospace, Astrocast, went public, and they were on the stock exchange in the different places, Nasdaq as for the Sophia Genetics. So also an increase in comparison with 2020. Now we are a bit not, I would say, afraid, but the current situation in the financial markets is not good, and we really hope that investors will still keep on investing in our startups, as it is the fuel for our ecosystem and for the diversification of our economy, as I mentioned before. Also, I would like to mention that in terms of investment made in startups, we are very lucky. Probably among the audience, there are business angels. We are lucky in this region to have business angels that invest their own money in startups. That's the way it goes. We need seed money, we need early stage investors, and we have the chance to have this business angels community very present, very dynamic in this region. 2,000 is the number of high-tech companies in Canton of Vaud. In total, there are 50, I mentioned 80,000 people before as professors, student researchers, and there are another 55,000 people working in high-tech companies in Canton of Vaud. I don't want to go in details to what is important now is to see all these corporates collaborating more and more with startups. There are many open innovation programs that gather the corporates and the startups, to make sure that together these two, I would say, important components of our economy are collaborating. And we see, for instance, more and more Nestlé collaborating with the local innovation ecosystem. We see also this in the life science. We see this in the field of ICT digital, especially in digital trust and cybersecurity with SIGPA, Kudelski, and Elka. Also, Logitech is collaborating very much into the different programs dedicated to startups. So it's quite interesting to see now this convergence between corporates and startups. So 20 million is the amount in our budget that we invest every year. It's non-refundable incentives in our innovation ecosystem. Not directly this 20 million go to startup, to SMEs financially, but it goes to make sure that we have a dynamic and systemic, I would say, network of partners collaborating together in these 4 pillars to support financially the companies, to provide coaching, tech transfer, to accelerate this tech transfer, to provide hosting opportunities with incubators, innovation parks, and to also provide cluster and business development opportunities thanks to different platforms that we are supporting directly. In terms of financial incentives, 600 projects every year are supported directly by our Office for Economic Affairs and Innovation. What do we do in terms of financial grants and financial support? We support companies in these 4 pillars: innovation, internationalization, training, industrialization. We support a project. We take 50% of the total cost, and every company can get support up to a maximum 500,000 Swiss francs all along the life cycle of the company. 3,000 is the number of companies that have been supported by Innovo since the last 10 years. Innovo has been created in 2012. Innovo is our innovation and investment promotion agency. It provides the services that are here. And 6 billion is the level of funding that we also provide through direct loans. So startups can benefit, thanks to the FIT Foundation, from 100,000 to 500,000 from direct loan, and it usually goes with a matching system with investors. So very interesting also for companies to access this type of support. 6,000 is the number of jobs created in our innovation parks. 7 innovation parks in different fields. 1 in life science, Biopole, 1 in agri-tech, Agropole. We have Swiss Aeropole also in Payerne. So 7 innovation parks with roughly 600 companies and 6,000 jobs. And finally, I would like also to mention the importance. We are partner of this GlobalTech. Every year we support 40 programs, events such as the GlobalTech. We support acceleration program, Mass Challenge, Kickstart, Tech for Trust. Why? We strongly believe that putting together corporate investors, academic labs, as well as the governmental bodies and the facilitators such as Innovo, the FIT Foundation, and our office, it really helps to develop the connections, to accelerate innovation. And this is also why we are very happy and proud to be partner here today. So I'm ending my presentation, and I really would like to wish you fruitful connections today, and happy to answer any question later.
Merci, Raphaël. Merci. Merci, merci. Obviously, innovation can only be possible with actually the support of the full ecosystem. So thank you very much for the support on both the financial aid side, education side, and the community side as well. So we all know that actually loyalty and brand entanglement is actually a big piece of understanding the value and increasing value and feeling value and perceiving value of any service that we're actually consuming. And so here to talk about brand and business strategy is Chantal Bauer from the Swiss House of Brands. You will hear from her passion around building brand positioning and business strategies, which has led her to define custom-fit strategies for many of her clients. She's also the co-author with Xavier Comtes of a book the levier de croissance à l'ère de l'économie numérique, the growth drivers of the digital economy. Without any further ado, Chantal Barre.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about brand tech, or the emergence of the brand as key business resource in the digital era. So brand tech is transversal. No business performance without brand plus tech. Faced with the growing complexity of organization, the brand is the cornerstone of the organization because it allows the transversality of all expertise. Raising the mission of the brand allows a macro vision in which all the existing elements are integrated and latent opportunities are revealed. Tech is how to set the music of the whole organization by boosting business performance, tracking and monitoring results, reducing complexity, automatize tasks. So, the brand is not about what you produce and sell. It is about the meaning of what you do for humanity and why you do it. The corporate mission is a powerful goal that defines how you intend to change the world for the better. Its role is to unite client and culture in the achievement of a common purpose. It's a statement of faith and hope. So here the aspiration brands. The mission, at Nike, we believe that if you have a body, you can be an athlete. The role, we exist to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete of the world. Find your greatness, just do it. Isn't that inspiring? They are not selling sports shoes or sneakers. They are inspiring. And this is an exercise that everybody can do, independent of the size of the company. Actually, the exercise could start by asking yourself how you would describe your activity to a child. This is valid in B2C like in B2B business. So once you have set the aspiration brand, what comes next? Starting with the brand tech definition. Brand tech starts with brand, which precedes technology. Entering the digital economy is not just about putting your business on digital. It is about transforming, developing your business so that it can deploy its full potential with digital technologies. It is the digital transformation and not just the transposition of traditional business on the digital vector. Once the mission and the role of the brand are defined, it's time to transform your product catalog within brand segment. The catalog of products is a no-go on a digital vector. People search for a solution or the answer to a problem on a search engine, and not the description or technical specification, but simply the answer to very targeted needs. So from the product catalog to the brand segment, so for brand X bikes, means of transport, bike to go to the office, bike to go to school. Sport equipment, starting sportive cycling, looking for a high-performance sport bike. Going then, or leading then to brand content, how to start sportive cycling, 10 best recommendation. What are the 10 most important criteria for a performance sport bike? This is how you show your expertise. And this is how her revenue increased by opening new sales territories. Change of organization. The old organization is pyramidal. The new organization is transversal. Each segment manager is an expert for his segment and the according community. Change of global organization. On the pyramidal figure, we are in a system that does not value the brand as an equity. The square figure is the new organization which values the brand and its data as an equity. Each of those brands is a profit center integrating all the parameters of a company. Agile organization allowing more flexibility, increase the financial value of each brand. Lycra brand was sold as a business identity, allowing DuPont to invest in other innovation. From customer target to ecosystem. Beyond the client who pay for your products and services, your ecosystem is everything that constitutes the universe of your brands. Supplier, partner, local and international organization, association, etc. Furthermore, the digital ideal is to build a cluster around your brand and core business. It's the trend of the holistic approach, the one-stop shop for clients. Fitness are integrating physiotherapists, nutritionists, esthetician, lawyers integrating fiduciary, tax specialists, even concierge services. Belonging to an ecosystem is a form of winning emulation where the success of some leads to the success of others. The ecosystem enriches your database, thus your community. If brand and data are the intangible asset of your organization, it is because the brand is the unique and differentiated identity of any organization. Data is the collective information that links all operation. There is no digital performance nor brand performance without data-driven organization. Coming to the growth drivers of the brand. And first, I would just like to precise that a brand is a trademark, meaning duly registered on a brand register. Intellectual property is the first step of the brand. So based on a properly positioned and registered brand, the possibility for growth are infinite. Geographical expansion through franchising, diversification through brand licensing, innovation through co-creation like Apple, Cisco, or Nestle. Co-branding, answer to different strategies, increase awareness, increase communities of both brands, enhance brand positioning, legitimize the credibility of a service. For example, the case with Supreme and Louis Vuitton, traditional luxury brands are often trapped in their timeless definition. So the co-branding between Louis Vuitton and Supreme is a win-to-win situation that reinforces the luxury positioning of Supreme and makes Louis Vuitton notoriety to a new target of young people, thus preparing the future. B2B co-branding strategy. How to open up the B2C market without cutting yourself off from your clients when you are a B2B supplier, by creating a brand distributed by your retailers. It allows you to create the link between the end user and to act on your brand and to preserve your investment. The label brand defend an interest on a market, together promote an industry, setting up shared criteria of quality, ethic, origin, etc., and the process to measure and control it. Sustainability, the unavoidable commitment of the 21st century. Beyond the awareness that a commitment to environmental sustainability and equitable prosperity is the only way to a livable world. For brands and companies, sustainability is as well a market opportunity, an innovation opportunity, a necessity in terms of image, long-term business performance, an important asset in HR recruitment. One of the most prosperous states in the world is the state of Vaud, where we are today. The main objective of the territorial brand Vaud Plus is sustainability. Companies in the state of Vaud can join a certification program and become brand ambassadors. If you are interested, just send your email to this address. So to end this presentation, business performance equal brand plus tech plus sustainability. Thank you for your attention.
Merci, Chantal. Thank you very much, Chantal. In particular, actually, brand empathy and then becoming brand ambassadors, which I think is actually quite important when you're passionate about a brand as well. So we get to go back into the startups again. So I'm pleased to invite Alexandre Gaia. I haven't actually seen yet, so I'm looking forward to actually seeing him. Right down the middle of the aisle from Sapporo to share with you more about Sapporo. So Alexandre, you have 5 minutes, and I will signal from here. Exact.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
No. Sorry. We're changing the agenda. Sorry, Alexandre. You've got some time then to think about, actually. You're all wired up, but apologies. So in that case, we are now inviting Jean-Baptiste Andriani, the CEO of IFA, International Fashion Academy from Paris. I did see you being ready, and I'm sorry I actually wasn't ready to invite you as well.
No worries.
I'm actually not going to cut into your introduction because I think you have a lot to show us. So without any further ado.
Great, thank you very much.
Jean-Baptiste.
Thank you, thanks for having me today. So obviously today I'm here to talk about fashion tech, but more specifically the symbiotic relationship that exists between fashion tech and sustainable development. So first of all, for those of you who wonder, my suit is entirely sustainable because it's made out of circular felt and it's made out of dead stock. And to build on what Chantal was saying, sustainability is extremely important, and it's even more important in the fashion industry. So what I propose we do today, 5 parts. Sorry, that's the lecture in me. So the first part will be about trying to define together what is fashion tech, because obviously I would say the internal definition with an internal insight of what fashion tech is very different from the general public perception. We look into the state of fashion tech in 2022, and the data that I used in that specific part is taken from a report that is done on a yearly basis by McKinsey and the Business of Fashion. So if you want to look into it and know a little bit more about the evolution of fashion tech, I strongly recommend you have a look at that report. Third part I call a Cornelian dilemma. It's very French. So the dilemma here is to try and understand how can we address the environmental situation, and at the same time, make sure that when we restructure the fashion industry, it's still a high-performing industry that is generating value and money. I will then move on to have a few case studies of startups, some that I have worked with in the context of IFA Paris, others that we have accelerated as well within IFA Paris because we created 3 years ago our own acceleration program in collaboration with IBM Studio France and a venture studio called Beyond Form. So I will just go through a few of the steps of the supply chain, from traceability to innovative materials, trend forecast, predicting trends, but in a different way when the product is already developed, and looking into what kind of startups are looking at closing the loop at the end of the day and making us fully sustainable. And then I will present you with my closing thoughts. So what is fashion tech? As far as I can remember, even when I was a student 20 years ago, we were already talking about fashion tech. And I remember my friends that were following academic programs in engineering being recruited by Dior at the time to work on their supply chain. So really, there's nothing new. It's just a fancy name that we have come up with in order to define new technologies that are applied throughout the supply chain. And the objective for us as an industry, as I was saying, is to become more efficient and potentially improve customer experience. Sadly, this is not necessarily what the general public sees when we talk about fashion tech. And I think this picture symbolizes pretty well what is fashion tech to the general public. So for those of you who have children, or those of you who are younger than me in the audience, you may recognize this picture because it's been extracted from Fortnite, a very famous game. Why am I showing you this picture? Because of the outfits of the different characters. These outfits have been designed as NFT, non-fungible token, by Balenciaga. So why would a luxury fashion house design NFTs? What is the point of NFTs? Sometimes it even escapes me. But from a strategic point of view, it does make sense because it allows Balenciaga to increase their customer base and at the same time making sure that they fight against counterfeits, because NFTs are part of the blockchain. That is a technology that we're putting together. So this is what we think of when we think of fashion tech most of the time, something that is very gimmicky at the end of the day. And in fact, I think it really encapsulates also what the general public thinks of fashion. Something that is very frivolous, celebrities wearing beautiful clothes. And at the end of the day, they seem to forget that in France alone, the luxury and fashion industry generate about 150 billion euros in terms of general turnover. That's about 1.7% of our national GDP, which is more than the automotive and the aircraft industry combined. Not that frivolous, if you ask me. So let's move on. Now, just to talk a little bit about fashion tech in 2022. Obviously, what happened with the COVID-19 has definitely accelerated the development of tech innovations within fashion. Just to give you an example, even for us as a school, we were enabled to let our fashion design students come to campus and do their usual fitting to be able to develop their last year collection. So what we did, thanks to our fashion tech lab, and thanks to different technologies we had, was to develop a virtual fitting with an avatar and with a prototype that is fitted thanks to a 3D modeling software. And this is something that a lot of other companies and a lot of other fashion houses have developed. Now, in terms of investment in tech, in 2021, it represented 1.8% of overall sales. Just to give you an idea, global sales in the fashion industry amount to about $2.4 trillion. So if you look here at this graph, that I took from the State of Fashion report, you can see that we are moving away from expected tech, something that we know really well, like CAD softwares, for example, IoT, to more sophisticated and more elaborate tech, machine learning, artificial intelligence, that have a huge estimated market value in terms of growth. And we're expected the investment in fashion tech to increase to 3.5% of total turnover in about 8 years. That's more or less $70 billion. If you look at global consumer spendings as well in virtual goods, you see that in 9 years, we have, let's say, a 20 to 25% increase. So what are we talking about when we say virtual goods? Again, NFTs. So I'm encouraging you, for example, to have a look at a brand called DressX. DressX was a traditional showroom located in Paris before COVID-19. After COVID-19, they have turned into a digital and a virtual showroom that is actually representing several brands that are selling NFTs for, let's say, your digital avatar or even for your Instagram accounts. So you can wear dresses thanks to those NFTs and filters without actually physically owning them. Now, if we look at the state of fashion tech in 2022 in terms of trends, we can identify 5 major trends. The first one, again, is really about the metaverse. And at the end of the day, we're expecting that this metaverse is going to generate more than 5% in terms of total revenue. Let's get back to the NFTs. So I'm sure a lot of you in the audience are familiar with Gucci. I don't know if you're familiar with a website called vaultgucci.com. Again, I invite you to try it out because you will see the amazing work that they have done with NFTs, particularly for a kind of gaming platform that is called Gucci Garden and Gucci Town, where, again, you can have your avatar and you can dress this avatar in NFT. NFTs, just to give you an idea of the retail price, a virtual handbag from Gucci is about $4,000 on that platform. So you can understand how it helps generate total revenue for the brands. If you look at Dolce & Gabbana, for example, that has developed recently a 9-piece collection of NFTs, this 9-piece collection was sold for about $5.7 million. So again, and as I said earlier on, this is something that totally escapes me. But I think from a business point of view, it makes sense. The sales margin that you're making on a digital creation is huge. And also, this NFT technology allows you to reproduce clothing almost at will without worrying about your IP or your designs being stolen. Second trend, 71% of global consumers want fashion houses to talk to them directly, having a sort of customized communication. I think there's a startup that really embodies this trend called Stitch Fix. Stitch Fix is an AI-based technology that will actually check your requirements, your wants, your needs, and on a monthly basis, it will send you clothes according to what it learned from you. A third trend is really about how to engage with customers thanks to technology within the stores. And with these technologies, customers tend to spend on average 4 times more in your stores. Burberry has understood that, and they launched what they call the Magic Mirror in their flagship is London. So standing in front of the mirror, you're able to try out different outfits without even having to go to a specific changing room. You can do this through AR, and you have styling options as well on this mirror. 60% of fashion executives that believe that creating digital processes will be one of the priorities. So I was telling you earlier on about the development of prototyping as well that is done digitally. And it will save a lot of money for fashion houses because having those different fittings is extremely expensive and very time consuming. But I think the more important trend, and the trend that I want to focus on today, is very much related with sustainability and traceability in particular. So why a Cornelian dilemma? This hashtag, sustainable fashion, has increased in terms of usage by 1,000% in the past 4 years. So there is awareness. Everybody knows that the fashion industry is the second biggest polluter in the world. Yet, despite this awareness, our carbon footprint hasn't decreased dramatically. Worse, the United Nations are saying that we are responsible as an industry for about 10% of global carbon emissions. Not great. The issue is, how do you restructure an entire industry? Yesterday, I was at the launch of what is going to become the Fashion Green Week in Paris. There was the Secrétaire d'État, Madame Schiappa, who was giving a talk and who was apparently appalled by the Fashion Week in Paris and at how much we were consuming in terms of energy. So the issue with this statement is that you're completely disregarding that Fashion Week in Paris generates 10 billion euros in terms of revenue. So how do we make sure that we can coincide the change of an industry with the improvement of our carbon footprint? And the answer, obviously, is technology and innovation. So I just wanted to show you a few startups that are working towards this. And I can start with traceability, just very quickly with this graph, showing you that actually 3/4 of the carbon footprint created in the fashion industry is happening at the sourcing stage. Now, in terms of traceability, if you think of the automotive industry, it's very easy to trace certain pieces because they are numbered. Try to trace yarns in the fashion industry, and all of a sudden, it becomes much more difficult and much more complex. So there's a startup that is called Textile Genesis that is doing this. They were actually part of the Global Climate Change Award in 2022 that is organized on a yearly basis by H&M. They've been working with H&M for the past 2 years, and what they're going to achieve by the end of this year is to trace about 200 million garments from the Swedish company. The objective, thanks to their AI, is actually to ensure that each garment can be traced. We can understand where the raw materials are coming from, and we can also understand what are things that we can put in place in terms of reduction of our carbon footprint. In terms of innovative materials, I don't know if you've ever heard of this startup, which is not really a startup, to be honest, anymore, because this year they've been through their C-Series fundraising, and they raised about 130 million euros. Modern Matter is a company that grows leather in a lab. The technology that they use is very much akin to slicing the human genome. So it's based on DNA technology. What they do is that they build protein, they grow protein actually. They slice it and they let it reproduce just like a normal cell, and then they harvest it through a fermentation process. And the result that you get is a leather that is eerily similar to typical leather that we have. Moving on to another startup that is focusing on measuring impact, particularly proud of this one and a couple of others that are coming because they are coming from our accelerator. This one is called Round Rack. So they have 2 ways and 2 different tools that they're working on. The first one is a collaborative new generation materials platform. They created this in collaboration with a brand called Pangaea, and the objective is to gather hundreds of feedback from designers, from brands, from suppliers on the format, nature, specific attributes of a fabric. And with this library that is going to be available to all, they hope that designers are going to be able to make informed choices when it comes to sustainability. But the best part, I think, is really this platform. This platform here helps a designer understand in terms of choice of material, design choices, production choices, what is the impact going to be? More specifically, what the carbon footprint is going to be, what the durability of the garment is going to be, and the degree of recyclability. So Round Rack is currently working with the UN and UNESCO, specifically in addressing or helping address Sustainable Development Goals. Prediction of trends. Just wanted to show you two startups very quickly. One is T-Fashion. It's been created by a 20-year-old, Turkish originally. What his AI does is that it scans millions of pictures throughout social media, and it's able to extract trends. So in terms of color coding, for example, the startup has a partnership with Pantone, and they will be able to advise a fashion company on what hues can be used if they want to maximize their sales volume, and also if they want to maximize their visibility in terms of social media. Currently, they are working with someone from the New York Fashion Week, can't really say, and they are presenting their tech to a variety of clients. This is trend prediction beforehand in terms of design development. But what happens after your design is being developed and commercialized? That's why this startup is very interesting. StyleSage, again, AI-based. But what this startup is really helping you to do is to basically centralize the entire benchmarking that you would be able to do only by hand, and gives you recommendations, for example, as to when a specific item is about to peak in popularity, so that you're able to anticipate in terms of promotional strategy and also in terms of stock management, how to deal with those garments. And finally, in terms of closing the loop, another startup that I really like because it comes from our accelerator is called Finds. What Finds does is that they have built a platform, AI-based again, a lot of AIs, where they are encouraging brands to log in, to put all the information they have related to their debt stock. And you know, in France, this is a big problem, les invendus. So they can input their debt stock in the platform, and then the AI and the designers also that are behind the platform are going to help the brand upcycle their debt stock. So creating new garments out of already existing unsold garments. And this is how we close the loop, and this is how we reduce our carbon footprint. So in terms of closing thoughts, I would be remiss if I don't talk about education, because IFA Paris is a network of schools. So fashion tech, sustainable design, obviously buzzwords for most of us, and they shouldn't be, because sustainability is inevitable. But it's great to talk about fashion tech and talk about tools like the EPNL, for example, of the Caring Group. But what happens if we don't train our youth to be able to use these specific tools? What I particularly appreciate in Switzerland is that you put a lot of emphasis on vocational academic programs, something that is very practical, pragmatic. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case in France, and you would be surprised for a nation that calls itself a startup nation, how very few programs we have in fashion tech. So in my conclusion, I'm just calling out to the Ministry of Education in France to be able to be more agile, think as a startup, and understand that the youth that we're training today is the youth that is going to be able to change the fashion industry. Thank you for your attention.
Oh, thank you very much, Jean-Baptiste. In 20 minutes, Jean-Baptiste, I think you were able to decompose an extremely complicated and comprehensive industry of fashion tech, be a role model from the beginning in terms of showing and wearing and being that through and through, breaking it down through the accelerator, and then focusing on a call to action with education. So I have to say the passion actually of bringing experience from, I think, Asia all the way to Europe, Middle East, and the US coming together really comes through. So thank you very much for that. With that, I am going to invite back to the stage Alexandre Gaia, our entrepreneur, who will share us more about his startup, Sapporo. So, Alexandre.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexandre Gaillard. I am the founder of Rivea, and today I would like to speak to you about our project. Rivea is a Swiss beach bread brand that creates eco-friendly swimwears in Europe using a fabric woven from plastic debris recovered from the seas and ocean, a button made from plastic ocean granules, and a TPU pouch, which is a biodegradable material. Since the creation of Rivea in 2021, we have had a simple objective: to prove that it is possible to create a swimwear adopting an approach that is the most respectful of the environment. So we have three aspects of these swimwears: the fabric, the button, and the pouch. As the time is counted, we will focus on one aspect, maybe the most anecdotal one, but also, in my opinion, the most interesting one, as we firmly believe that small things can have a big impact. So we will talk about the button. Why we have created a button made with ocean waste. We already know the facts. According to the United Nations report, if we don't make rapid permanent changes to our pattern of consumption and approach to waste management, by 2050, our ocean will contain more plastic than fish. That's not very long, so why wait? In a race against time such as this, and as I said before, even little things can have beneficial effects. This is why even our button has been made with Herpet, produced by a young Swiss company based in Basel, called Tide Ocean, that is actively seeking solutions to fight against marine plastic pollution. This innovative startup has involved local communities on the island of Southeast Asia, including the Adamame Island, in setting up an effective system of managing waste and collecting plastic. The recovered sorted plastic waste is taken in Switzerland, reducing transportation to the max with the least carbon footprint possible, where it is transformed into Herpet, thanks to a partnership with the Swiss Institute of Materials Technology and Plastic Processing. It is from this locally produced, traceable, eco-friendly material that we have molded our buttons. The global goal, understood, is giving to plastic a value. Because we don't believe in leaving anything to chance, we asked Elisa Pantazopoulos, a jewelry artist based in Geneva, to design the perfect button for our swim shorts. By reworking the Rivea logo and stylized waves graphic in her hands, the button becomes a work of true craftsmanship. Take a closer look of this button. The curves are irregular, just like the pattern on the surface. That's because it was drawn by hand. To make it, she used the time-honored lost wash technique, where the organic imperfection inherent to what is handmade results in a perfect piece of jewelry. Once a wash version of the desired design has been achieved, a metal mold of the wax model is made in-house. Last but not least, an essential step in the production of our ocean button is plastic injection. There are indeed few people in this field who have the technical skills to produce an object of such a complexity and precision. We therefore called on a local company based in the Jura with 40 years of expertise in the field. This company initially worked in the design of parts of the watchmaking, medical, and defense sectors. With enthusiasm, they got caught up in our desire to make this art object button in-house with a Swiss precision. A unique result. And now, as a resume, I invite you to follow a story that illustrates everything and our Instagram account. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And indeed, my error, apologies for what errors in my notes from Ribert. And just following, indeed, Jean-Baptiste's presentation as well. So I'd like to introduce Olivier Ires from Sapporo.
Yeah, that
Thank
works.
you very much.
Thank you very much. So the third time is a charm. I'm actually Sapporo. Thank you very much for the invitation to the Global Summit. It's going to be a pretty harsh transition because we're going to talk about cybersecurity. So I'm just going to leave you 2 seconds to breathe it out. It's going to be fine, though. I will not get into too much details, hopefully. How does this thing work? Yeah. All right, so maybe some of you have heard about us. We are very proud to be one of the very few Swiss startups operating in cybersecurity. As you may know, this is a market that is heavily dependent on American and Israeli technologies right now. We have a saying in cybersecurity, we say, if you've not gone to the Mossad before, it's going to be a bad product. So I'm very glad to be actually in Switzerland, offering a solution that is really dramatically innovative in the market. And already, well, let's say, since the 1 year ago we created the product, we were elected the best cybersecurity company in Switzerland by the Trust Valley. We today received a FEED loan from the Innovo. We raised about 6.5 million in VC capital. And for a Swiss startup, this is already not bad. So I will not try to explain to you what the product does in details, because it's more for engineers. But I will try to explain the problem, because I think it's important everyone understands that. So cybersecurity today, you may know, faces a lot of challenges. They are being increased with the current conflicts. The number of attacks has never been that high before in history. And what I can say about it is mainly because of 3 aspects. The first is the complexity and the fragmentation of environments. So when I'm talking about environments here, I'm talking about all the applications that you use, that your company uses, all the Office 365, AWS, Google Cloud, Active Directory, and stuff like that. And this is an actual graph of what an IT environment can look like when it gets big. So it's impossible to understand what there is. Today, the tactics that are used and the measurements that are used are, well, we can just say it as it is, mostly ineffective. This is the percentage to number of organizations that were compromised by at least one successful attack in 2021. And as you can see, it's not down to 0 at all. And the main responsible factor for that is the false positives. We have a way of anticipating attacks today that is mostly based on compliance and best practices, which are by definition always born after the attacks. And so it's always too late. And then the other big problem is the finite financial and human resources in cybersecurity. There is a huge people gap. Last year, it was estimated that it was 4 million people were lacking in cybersecurity. And so what does that mean is we need more context, we need more prioritization, and we need more automation. So talking about the tools that existed today, and I explained why we were born, is there were tools that enabled companies to become reactive in security, but not always proactive. And when I'm talking about the tools that cover fragmented environments, I'm talking about these environments right there. Maybe you recognize some of the logos here. This is just an example. Problem that we see in the current attacks, and that's for you to know as well, because every user is responsible for that. If one of you clicks on a phishing link once, well, your account is not just standing by itself. It's connected to other accounts, other groups, other devices, and the user will just use that passage, escalate the privileges to take over the whole infrastructure of your company. And that poses a big problem. The problem and the reason why your cybersecurity team are maybe painful to the business and like, oh, no, not these guys again, is because they need to treat with a deluge of alerts, and they cannot do that effectively. Some companies receive about 1 million alerts per day, and there are 5 in the team. So, of course, they're not defending their organization as best as they can. And the final problem with legacy tools is, as I talked about it before, security is very reactive today. We invest a lot in what we call detection and response. So we detect an attack, we try to respond to it, but in any case, the attacker is already inside the organization. That means it's already too late, right? Plus, it's an expert problem, so it doesn't scale. So our tagline is to bring order in chaos, right? So what we want to do is to focus on identity and permissions. And again, you will find all these logos that we capture inside SAPRO and help organizations to reduce all these permissions, all these accesses that are not necessary to run the business, and by focusing on how the attacker sees an environment and translating it so that the defenders can do something about it. Contextualized prioritization. So this is one of the biggest things today. Imagine you live in a villa, you have like 25 windows, an attacker could enter from any one of those windows. The goal is to transform that into a fort where the attacker has only one possible entry point. This is what we help doing. And finally, to anticipate the impact of changes. So that means if you are a Salesforce guy creating permissions or using Workday or HubSpot or Azure or Office 365, the goal in the end is that you, not security, you can have a way to know if the permissions you create pose a threat to cybersecurity. Do we have it's time left? Okay, all right, so I will just say this. This is not about the product, but I think it's important for anybody here to understand the problems. And then if there are CTOs, CIOs, engineers in the room with that topic in mind, please come back to the booth, and I will gladly explain what we do. Thank you so much.
Merci, Olivier. Merci. Thank you, Olivier. You are in luck, Olivier, because our next 2 speakers are just that. So our next 2 speakers, please welcome to the stage. We have, I'm sorry. Apologies that we actually weren't able to finish your last slides. We have André Blanc, the Innovation Director of ERA Group, who is not only Innovation Director, but also CIO, and Edouard Duverger, who's the Chief Information Officer of MCI Group, who also makes sure that everyone is secure and is the ones managing these million alerts, I think.
Yes, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, everyone, and thanks a lot to the GlobalTech Summit to let us to be here today. The objective is really to share with you if the cloud can be secure, and as Olivier said with SAPRO, what can be the solution we can also implement to be secure on the cloud. First of all, excuse me, I'll forward this one. I would like to thank you, Edouard Duverger, to be here today with us and to share also his experience about the cloud and the transition he made from several years now, from the on-prem environment and to the cloud environment, and if, we will see at the end of this presentation, if the security was raised with this kind of solution. But I'll let you introduce you, Edouard.
So I'm Edouard Duverger. I'm the CIO of MCI Group, which was actually an event management company that was founded in 1987 in Geneva. We're now 2,000 people over 30 countries, and our strategy was already before COVID to be more digital and to do more brand activation, and COVID just accelerated things. So we're composed of 7 agencies and 6 ventures, and as I said, we're working worldwide.
Thank you.
Up to you.
Quickly about ERA, we are a Swiss group founded 2 years ago and based on a long-standing presence in Switzerland with several companies, managing services, cloud, cybersecurity, talent management, and also technology provider. And as we signed the ERA last week or last 2 weeks, we are also really involved in the sustainability because IT must reduce also his impact. So just, Edouard, jump into this big roadmap of your journey to the cloud, and maybe we can have an overview about what you did from the 2014 when you started to have this cloud project. Can you maybe detail?
So as I said, we're basically an event management company. So our staff is not at the office. So we had to provide solutions that would answer our talents and clients' needs, and that can be accessible from anywhere and on any device. So we started what we call the walk into the cloud, and decided to go to Google initially, which did not fully answer our needs. So then we decided to work with Microsoft. So at the beginning, what we did is actually building from scratch the entire new system. Based on identity, so what Olivier just talked about, which is the Active Directory. And as we were and we're still a small team, we decided to automate as much thing as possible from the beginning of the journey. So then, thanks to Microsoft also, that is providing a lot of solutions in the cloud, we were one of the first actually to fully migrate our data to SharePoint Online. I guess everyone now is using those solutions, or Google Cloud or something like that, which allowed us to access data from anywhere. And the challenge with that, and also Skype telephony, so you can get called from anywhere and on any device. So the challenge with that is that when your data is in the cloud, you're more exposed to attackers. So what we did is to say, what can we put in place to allow our users to be safe and allow our clients' data to be safe? Because we're working with most of the Fortune 500 companies and also big associations, and we manage around 2 million personal data per year. So this is why we have to. Is it me or? Yeah, I guess. 2 million data per year, personal data per year. So we have to keep everything as secure as possible. So we benefited from Microsoft Advanced Threat Protection, which is analyzing all your incoming emails. And then what we did is to put Microsoft Defender in place on computers, which is an AI solution that analyzes everything that is on your computer and checks if there are not malwares that are compromising your computer. And then something that was quite complicated is that we put multi-factor authentication in place. This was not very easy for users to put the solution in place, because this entire journey is very technical. But what we really need is to do change management. And that's the critical part that we have to go through to get the adhesion of users. And as Olivier said earlier, security is not fun. So you have to make people understand that you have to keep that in place and be as less intrusive as possible. But there are some things that are really helping increasing the security, and multi-factor authentication is one of the main solutions. And then, as I said, we put automation in place and other solutions.
Okay. You were talking about people in your company. Did they understood this transformation? What were the impact in their day-to-day job? And also, we talked about the COVID in last presentation. What was also the benefits or the challenge?
So it really impacted users, or talents, as I would say, because it was a drastic change of the way of working. So we had to do a lot of communication, a lot of trainings to be successful. But today, they will not go back. They really have something that is easy to use. They can move from their computer to their iPhone, to their iPads, and continue working, which is very, very efficient. And the good thing, as André was mentioning, is that during COVID, as you guess, we're an event management company. And you didn't participate in many events, I guess, for 2 years. So we're very, very impacted in terms of business. And as all of you, we were working from home. And the good thing with this entire walk into the cloud is that everybody was able to work as efficiently at home as at the office. And that really, really allowed us to thrive during this complex situation.
Thank you, Edouard. And also, we saw that you started also in ISO 27001 and 701 transformation and also certification. It was more about your client recommendation, or it was to raise your security posture?
So I didn't mention, but I'm an IT security engineer initially, so I have strong awareness on security. Before GDPR was in place, so starting in 2017, we were already answering a lot of RFPs from those big clients that we have. And we saw the increase of awareness from them on IT security and data privacy. So we had the strategy to be ISO certified, because basically that's what most of our clients are requesting. So it's a decision, an internal decision based on our knowledge of security, but a requirement from our clients. So hopefully we'll get this certification in 2 months.
We cross fingers. Thanks a lot. Maybe we can switch on the next one, because we have 5 minutes left now. And on the MCI Group global approach with this kind of big journey, big transformation, you said about the driver, it was to let your users work from anywhere with any device in any time, also be more efficient, I think. What was the main challenge maybe you face in this transformation? We talked with Sapporo about the identity, and that's the center of the discussion in cybersecurity. But it's not a technological transformation only. It's also human and governance.
Yeah, as I said, we didn't do that for just for the tech purpose. We did that to answer business needs. So the driver is a business driver, as you can see. And we had to manage the identity, and which is a good thing to centralize and standardize it. But it's also quite complex, because if you get your personal identity compromised, as Olivier was saying before, then as we use single sign-on, everything gets compromised. So as I said earlier, the human factor is super important, and we're a company that is centered on human. We're providing human services. So we had to work a lot on change management and ensure that user adoption is there across the entire globe. So we have to adapt to most of the cultures, which is not always that easy. And then what is super important is that you put governance at the center also of your project. And this also helps in change management, because if you work and define your strategy and your processes properly, then it's easier to have them adopted by talents internally. And one thing that is super complex, at least for us, is standardization, because we're a group of small companies, and they're not working all in the same way. So you have to find a common factor and be able to standardize as much as possible, which allows you to automate also as much as possible. And then technology is just the enabler for that. So yeah, we use the cloud, which is really efficient. Also in terms of cybersecurity, it's great because we work mainly with Microsoft right now, and they spend $1 billion per year in security, which is not what we can spend on our side. So this really helps.
Thanks a lot, Edouard. Can we say that this slide is the starting point of your transformation? Because I think today you are raising your security, maybe you have a SOC, and you also implemented SOC. Is it the enabler to be able to implement this kind of technology and also this kind of services?
Yeah, for sure, because you have to see in the long run. So if you don't take those three factors into consideration, then you will just like do small projects and add them without any vision. It will make the standardization more complex. And as you said, we're implementing also a security operating center because we see that there are a lot of attacks. And again, as Olivier mentioned before, we get a lot of alerts. So we need to automate and find the right solutions to manage those alerts and not be affected by the false positives that are raised by the tools.
Yeah. And that's why also we are partner of support. Okay, the end of the presentation is a quick overview about the challenge and the benefits you can give us to you today. Give us to us.
So yeah, before our journey, we were a very small IT team. We're 2 people, and we didn't have that much standardization, and the IT system that was in place was very complex, and we didn't have the keys to it, which was even more complex. And after this journey, the good thing is that, or a good thing, is that we're still a small IT team, but we provide more and more services. So I think earlier in the afternoon, we talked about project managers that are in-house. That's the decision we took because we want to know our business and manage our business internally. And as I said, COVID had no impact on the efficiency of our business. And this also helped building trust in the IT team and be able to get people together and put more and more services in place.
So it's a positive journey you made to go to the cloud and also help you to raise your security posture.
Yeah, for sure. And reduce budgets also, so that's even better.
That's a good news. Thanks a lot, Edouard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Edouard and André, for sharing a real-life, practical example as well. Coming from a company called InvestCloud, of course, I was very keen to see that journey as well. We also started this morning where Skylar also talked about a practical example. And one of the experiences he talked about was payments. Payments, why you buy, not build, because it exists already. Well, the next speaker, Jarno Machado, has spent a while, over a decade, in payments innovation, working with MasterCard, Visa, Google, Apple, Garmin, Fitbit, you name it, to bring experience now to Kona Bank and Kona Card.
Thanks a lot. Good. Thanks for the introduction, and I'm very glad to be here with you today in Lausanne. My name is Jarno Marchetto. I'm responsible for innovation and business solutions at Corner Card. And just briefly, Corner Card is the payment card division of Corner Bank. So we issue payment cards, credit and prepaid cards in Switzerland and in Europe. And Corner Bank, very probably you know, we are based in Lugano. We are very experienced in payments. We have been a Visa International founding members, and back in 1975, we issued the first payment card in Switzerland. So even if I have gray hairs, I was not working for Corner Bank at the time, believe me, just to be clear, but my colleagues managed to do so, so I think we can say really we have a good experience on that. So what I'm going to talk to you about today, let's say 3 main topics. One, which are the key trends in payment tech? And why tech? Why technology? Because actually technology is what drives innovation forward in payments. And not only actually in payments, we've seen several other industries, right? Then we'll focus just briefly on privacy and the privacy-related aspects or impacts due to these technology developments, and also to law and regulation we have in Switzerland and in Europe. And finally, we'll look, again, shortly, briefly, about the critical factors. Let's start with the technology. So in my opinion, there are 5 main trends, which are very probably, if I link to the other presentation we have seen until now, not only specific to the payment industry, but some of them are maybe more specific. The first one are the developments on hardware and cryptography. Second one is tokenization, a very specific technology to the payment or banking industry. Third one, very common one, artificial intelligence, machine learning. The fourth one, let's say, used in different different industries, but specifically in banking, biometrics or biometric technologies. And finally, very, very common too, is the cloud. Let's start with the hardware and cryptography. What we can say here. So with the time, we had increasingly complex, but also computational capable hardware. So if you think we started enabling payments with very simple cards, with no intelligence on that, just data, right? And with the time, these cards started embedding some computing capabilities, microchips, right? And then cards evolved to other supports, like smartwatches, smartphones, laptops, PCs. I can already tell you what is the next frontier. The next frontier is cars. Why cars? Because actually we are going to putting payment credentials also on cars so that you can buy on the fly, for example, thinking about electric vehicles, you can buy on the fly more power or more battery life. It's not a dream, it's really something that manufacturers are working right now, and we are going to support them in this transition, right? And the second point is cryptographic algorithms, or in general, cryptography software. Why that? Because as you know, I mean, not only in payments or banking, but in general, cryptography is what, let's say, put data at safe, what makes everything secure, right, on the internet, for example. And what we did here was pretty simple, right? We kept updating and updating cryptographic algorithms, right? So that we have been always adapting these algorithms to the possible threat and attacks. You have seen we have a very specialties there. We have a lot of companies that are working on that. But in general, it was like, really, let's update the algorithms. And I can tell you already the industry is ready to go to the next jump, which is basically quantum-resistant cryptography. You know that there was a discussion a couple of years ago, what happens when quantum computing are coming to the world, that really also, let's say, criminals can use them to threat the internet in general, the financial industry, right? And I can tell you, we already have algorithms ready there. We just will update what we are using here. Tokenization, what does it mean in really very simple words? We take some sensitive data, we replace this data with an alter ego, something which is not sensitive anymore, not valuable, right? And in this way, we protect the information itself. It is pretty used in our industry. We started using that in order to, let's say, mask the long number that you find on your card. And in this way, we were able, let's say, to share this number, because it's not this number anymore, it's an alter ego, with third parties. For example, with, as it was mentioned before, with smartphone manufacturers, Apple, Samsung, Google, or even on online merchants, right? What we do today is we never share your card number with these players. We just give them an alter ego to put on their databases, right? What is important here is this technology has been compatible with existing infrastructure, so that we didn't have to adapt what was very solid and strong and developed with the here. And again, what is also important here to highlight is that tokens are secure, and we can put them on several possible supports. I talked before about hardware developments, so from cars to smartphones to smartwatches and even cars. So this is the basis, hardware basis for this kind of facility. Artificial intelligence, machine learning. I don't want to talk too long here because, I mean, we have heard a lot about that, but in general, what I can say is that machine learning in particular is used more and more in the financial industry, and in particular also in payments. And not only for, let's say, customer segmentation or marketing, but in particular for, let's say, core-related, core functionalities like fraud prevention, like compliance, and so on. As you know very well, this works with large quantity of data. What does it mean? That as an industry, we started collecting more and more data, which are not really directly related to payments, but are more contextual, right? And maybe another information I want to share from my experience is, we heard also before, so it's not easy to go from theory or from out-of-the-box tools to something which is really working in production. And not only because of the technology, which is complex, but also because you have to, let's say, consider several aspects like data protection, privacy, and also ethics, even be sure not to discriminate maybe some customer segment because of these technologies. Biometrics, something that you know very well from your smartphones, right? So Touch ID or fingerprints, right? And obviously this technology is already used in the banking industry, in the financial industry. Think about accessing your online banking or enabling your payments and so on. But on the other hand, there are already good developments on an additional layer, let's say, of security, of privacy, which is behavioral biometrics. What we are doing here is basically we add an additional layer of security, as mentioned, and we track not only, let's say, your biometric threads, but we look really at, for example, how you enter numbers or words at your keyboards, or how you move your mouse on your screen when you are doing some payments online, or how you handle your smartphone or tablets when you buy online. What is important to say here is really something that I want to anticipate. These data are never shared with other systems or players in clear. So these data are always anonymized, encoded, and obviously encrypted before we share them, so that we can use the value of the data to produce score, to get more accuracy of our systems, but the data is always protected, and obviously also your privacy. We never give a link or possible link to give back this information to your person. And again, in biometrics, it's even more important because the sensitive information is directly related to you as a person, as an individual. And finally, we have the cloud. As an architecture, specific architecture for software and hardware. And as you probably know, the banking sector was at the beginning a little bit reluctant about using that. Okay, what are we doing here? We are putting customer data somewhere and we don't have any control on that. As you heard before, and you very probably know, this is not the fact. So data in the cloud are very well protected, even sometimes more than on data center or banking data center. And in particular, encryption typically is what ensures here also data protection and privacy. So data are always encrypted when you transfer them and where they are stored at rest, right? But what is good here in cloud for our industry is really the scalability. So the cloud gives you more power, more storage capabilities. And this technology enables typically some use cases like I was explaining before, biometrics advances, right? Or artificial intelligence and machine learning. So now that we have looked at the technology developments a little bit more in detail, let's talk about the privacy impacts. Okay, in general, I can tell you, the introduction of these technologies did not jeopardize, in general, data security or privacy. Absolutely not. On the contrary, some technologies have been really explicitly introduced to protect privacy. Think about tokenization. Again, I swap some sensitive data with an alter ego which doesn't have any value per se, right? And in addition, what I was anticipating before, those kind of data are always masked, encrypted, encoded, in some time anonymized, so that the clear data are never shared. You never have a link back to the original information. In addition to that, it's not only technology that protects us for data and privacy, but it's also the legal framework. I'm pretty proud to say that in Switzerland and in Europe, we have a very flexible legal framework, but on the other hand, laws and regulation are pretty heavy and hard what the privacy is concerned, for example. Think about the banking secrecy first, so this is something that regulates our industry first, right? But also the FINMA, the job that FINMA does here, you heard before, the big work that FINMA experts are doing here. And then very specific laws like the Federal Act on Data Protection, the Data Protection Ordinance, which are obviously valid for Switzerland. And if you go a little bit broader in Europe and worldwide, you have things like GDPR, PSD2, strong customer authentication, and even industry standard like PCI that really make sure that as a player, you have to have the technology, but you also have to keep up to date with data protection and privacy. So it's a fact that the debate about data protection, privacy in our world, in the banking industry in general, is always open and pretty strong debated sometimes. Like we have areas where there are a lot of discussion, and also because things are evolving, strongly evolving. Things about how we minimize the data we collect, right? Or how we handle the very sensitive data, like, for example, when you purchase something online, like a drug, medication, and basically you can tell me, okay, the bank knows that I have maybe some medical issues, right? And also very typical things which are not, let's say, specific of our industry, like the roles of the controller and processor, or, for example, identification and authentication systems, which is obviously the core of data security and privacy in banking, but not only. But in general, what I would like to highlight here is that the combination of the two, so the technology and law framework, legal framework, is working pretty well. Again, technology is protecting information, is protecting data, is protecting privacy, right? And the laws are constantly up to date, are constantly evolved so that the players are forced, in any case, to make sure that the data are correctly protected. And another thing maybe that we can add here is that sensitive data typically remains with the user. So are stored on the user device and are in full control of the user. User decides, okay, what I want to do with my data. Do I want to share them with some parties? If yes, which are these parties, right? And typically, these data are not stored in any case. You always have some alter egos or anonymized data that goes through other systems and other players. And so before I, let's say, close this presentation, because this is the next point and the core point, you would say, okay, thanks, Jarno, so you're telling me I can sleep very well, very relaxed, technology, laws will protect us forever. There are no issues. No, actually, there is one, and we've seen also in the previous presentation, the critical factor is the human factor, actually. So we can do all this work of updating technology, updating laws and so on. But in the end, the humans, the people are maybe here the critical factor. Because think about, really, there are people that exchange very sensitive information, financial information through insecure channels. People asking their relationship manager, please send me the banking statement of WhatsApp, okay? Or please send me, I don't know, the list of my full investment and assets on my Gmail account. Okay, but actually, what are you doing here, right? And even worse, some people are obsessed, okay, banks, what do banks do with my data? So what they do with that, right? And then they post their pictures with family, friends, relatives about location, purchases, assets they own, without any shame. I mean, and you have this information, I can tell you right now. So we have very professionals that can protect the information. We've seen specialized companies. We've seen laws that forces us to do so. But in the end, what hackers and criminals do today is they just go on the web, on the social media, and they harvest a lot of information without any issue. And they know very well the victims, what they are doing, who do they know, and what, for example, they own and they can steal, right? So think about that. We can protect everything, but in the end, if people share this information and put it in very clear way and clear open source, let's say, way on the web, that's the issue. That's all from my side, and I thank you so much for the attention, and I'm gladly available for further discussion later.
Thank you so much, Jarno. I'm glad that you'll be available to discuss at the apéro as well. Speaking of, I would like to invite some of the speakers on stage for the roundtable, but I do need to ask for those of you who are here. We do have our last speaker, Sanjay, who's just in the back, sorry, from Microsoft, an expert on the metaverse. And I know many of you want to hear about the metaverse, so I do ask if you can stay on just a bit longer. Instead of finishing at 5:30, we're going to finish at 5:40, and I hope that's okay. And then the apéro, where you can ask Jarno your questions. So those of you on the panel, please come up. But I would like to actually invite and introduce one special guest. Oh, if you can go back to the previous slide. Katja Lutzing, who is the CEO and co-founder of Kickstart Innovation. So Katja actually started really in Asia, and really with Startup Malaysia as well, where she started activities around 2013 in innovation and in startups. So she took that passion and she co-founded Kickstart Innovation as well, and has been recognized even by the White House for her innovation and diplomacy as well. So thank you very much for being with us. And I'm going to invite you to take a seat, and as well other speakers who've been with us today to also take a seat as we enter our panel discussion as well. For those of you in the audience, this is the moment you can be interactive as well. So feel free to actually join us on Slido, use the QR code behind me as well, or enter in slido.com, the number below, and feel free to ask your questions as well during Slido, and we'll see if we can get a few of these for the next 20 minutes before we invite Microsoft to talk about the metaverse. I'm not going to reintroduce everyone on stage, but I'm going to direct my first question to Katja. So Katja, many individuals, I'm actually from California originally, but I'm Swiss.
I saw your background in Berkeley. I lived there for a couple of years. So.
And Berkeley, indeed. And I get a lot of questions around why Switzerland. When we look at innovation, technology regulation, we heard as well, why Switzerland?
So I think it's a very loaded question, but I will try to be brief. So, my background is, as mentioned, I lived in many other countries and moved to Switzerland just 9 years ago. So I was one of those expats learning about our innovation ecosystem. But at the same time, was also starting Kickstart. And Kickstart is connecting startups from Switzerland, but also globally from many different countries, with organizations in Switzerland in the public and private sector to work on commercial projects. I think there's a lot of amazing opportunities in Switzerland. We work in many different verticals. So for example, in finance, of course, in health, but also in food and retail. And we have seen many other topics connected to sustainability and digitalization. I think our startups really come to Switzerland because they feel that they can really connect on the niche kind of things that they can work on. Many times they can also scale much faster. But as all we know, there's limitations to Switzerland on the base of if you want to scale, it's not, it's really not the easiest country. But in the same time, it happened to us many times that there will be startups coming from many other countries to tackle Switzerland as one of the first European countries because it has a lot of presentation and representation of the quality. And so we have seen that there are startups who make it in Switzerland and then scale even further. And I could speak for many different of the verticals and the topics, but I will maybe let other speakers and we can come back to it with the examples or so.
Can I ask one follow-up question? Sorry, and then I will go to the speakers. If then you look globally, so that's for Switzerland, if you were to pick a role model example where you would say this is what you would invite others to follow in terms of innovation, in terms of the steps they took to take an idea, what would that be?
I couldn't understand the first half of the question, I'm so sorry.
If you have an example, taking a bit more of your global experience, of what you can advise individuals to be as a role model example of taking an innovation from one part of the globe, transporting to another, and then
it really depends, I think, of the audience. So, if you speak of the startups, I think, with open innovation or the innovation, people always say, okay, you have to really kind of see how the innovation can work. I think the ecosystem are quite different. It happened to me so many times and people say, okay, you were in Silicon Valley, so we're just implementing now in Switzerland. This is not how it works, right? So it's more just to say, okay, what is the ecosystem really strong about? And there are some funny examples that it happened to me, for example, with a failure. So I give you an example because originally I'm European. And it happened to me that I was pitching to the investors in Silicon Valley with my solution. And in that time, they will say, hey, so I was pitching for 3 million in that time for one of the solutions I was working on. And they kind of said, okay, why will we invest in you? So I went through all the spiel. And in the end, they kind of say, okay, I will have the last question for you. And say, yes. Oh, when did you fail the last time? And I said, I'm originally European, so I never fail, I'm perfect. And the investor was looking at me and said, I'm not going to give you this money. And I was like, why? And he said, I'm not going to be your first failure. So I went home, bought a really big bottle of wine. 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, there was a conference and I'm walking down the hill, down the hallway, and I can see the investor. And I was horrified because I'm like, oh, he's going to make fun of me, And he said, oh, I remember you. Do you remember how to fail now? And I said, yes, I fail every day. Let me tell you about all the challenges. And he said, okay, you can call my assistant and we are going to, arrange a meeting. And I got the investment. And why I'm saying this as an example is that I think something as a failure in Switzerland is still a little bit kind of in that stage that a lot of startups are really scared to fail. A lot of the corporates we work with, failure, it's not something as part of success also to say, I tried and it's not working and we can pivot and we can do other things. And so this is definitely something that was quite challenging for me in the beginning when I started working in Switzerland with startups and organizations and public and private sector to kind of say, hey, failure is part of the process. It's actually fine. This is how you innovate. This is how you focus. This is how you grow. So those will be maybe some of the examples. From the startups, we have over 400 alumni, so I don't think you want me to talk about many examples because we'll be here over the apero.
Yeah, no, I love that example of fast fail almost, right, and failing. I'm going to maybe ask Chantal as a follow-up from that. Do you have actually a story, particularly you talked about brand tech and brand reputation and the link of reputation, maybe of either a success story or a failure story that you want to share that made a real difference to a company in this ecosystem?
Actually, I have a story where you have both. Actually, for me, a failure is when I am not able to convince a client to go in the right direction. And for example, I have a client that is working in a construction company. And I started to speak with him about, it's a long-lasting client, I started to speak with him about sustainability. And he said to me, oh no, Chantal, you're not going to start with this bullshit again. So, but I really insisted time after time about this, telling him that it was in his activity, it was the best added value he could offer, as institutions, of course, are the main clients for this type of activity. And finally, we succeeded in, well, with one of his, let's say, transport company, we succeeded in investing in, let's say, the first 40 tons load with electricity. And in fact, yes, it was a very, very big success because they were the first one. We were able even to put this on the press and TV ad, and it brought him actually a real added value as it was a point of differentiation towards his competitors. So that's
a great
the
example.
failure success story.
That's a great example. Thank you. Jarno, you talked, I mean, Chantal just talked about change of mind, right? Actually accepting something when you're not ready to accept it. One of the challenges we heard today, in addition to technology and regulation, is change management. Can you talk a little bit maybe about your payment journey? We talked about what were the change management aspects that you would actually advise if someone was to do that again, that you would really recommend? Or tips around that?
I believe internally you can talk about, let's say, this transition from the, say, plastic cards and any other support, any other possibilities in terms of payments, right? So this was a big jump for the industry, again, enabled by this tokenization technology, but also, let's say, from normal employees who was saying, okay, what is going here, right? So we move payment credential to other support, to other players like Apple, Samsung. They say, okay, but we don't want to share anything with those ones, right? But actually, it was important to do so because it really, let's say, gave a lot of traction, let's say, to payments to be used instead of the typical cash payments that we have before, right? So I think this was something internally, and externally was exactly also the mindset to say, okay, I don't have to pay anymore just with a card or online, but I can do a lot with the smartphone or with other supports. This has been a pretty nice experience to live.
And any advice moving into the change management almost in that? Because as you say, there's disbelief until almost way after the adoption has happened. So for the next change that we're getting ourselves ready for, how do you prepare for that?
I think the next change is already happening right now, right? Because we have a lot more players in the industry. So before it was like the banking sector was very closed and just banks could work there, right? And more we have other players, financial services industries, but also other players like for security, like for the road regulation and so on. So we have many players, and the big deal here is really to opening up the system, but enhancing the system, actually.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cecile. So I think, sorry.
Can I answer the
Yes.
question, why Switzerland?
Yes, why
Because
Switzerland, please?
Actually, I mean, then I'm happy to answer your question. We have been asked many times, and we are fighting against actually some other countries. When you have foreign financial institutions or just a startup or whoever, usually they don't come from Switzerland. Maybe you have one or two guys from Switzerland, and then you have others from abroad, and etc. So it's not Swiss-based company that comes wanting a license from FINMA. So when it comes from abroad, we do always have to do those tables where we explain how the legal system works, how the tax system works, and you have those super complicated charts with all the Switzerland, UK, US, France, and then etc. And so yes, why Switzerland? We are fighting actually against some other legal frameworks, and I have to admit that sometimes we lose because they choose then another jurisdiction. I would think that mainly it's because of costs and timing. Of course, FINMA is not the fastest regulator, and of course, given that we are based in Switzerland, legal advisors and employees and etc. do have a cost that might be higher than in other countries. So we do lose sometimes, but most of the time, hopefully, we win. And they choose Switzerland. And why Switzerland? Because we have a legal framework that is set, that is not going to change, that can evolve if needed. And this is not always the case in all jurisdictions. So first, I think the fact that we do have this DLT framework that we have, and we don't have like thousands of other laws that are in the pipeline, that gives certainty to the legal framework, and I assume also for tax. I'm not a tax specialist, but I see that our tax treatment is also competitive. And the fact that we can discuss with the authorities, with FINMA, with the tax authorities, you can discuss with them. So I would say that's why Switzerland.
And can I ask even further, because that was a great answer, and I was actually going to bring it back to Switzerland in terms of regulatory framework. Is you talk mostly about FINMA in terms of the bank regulation for digital assets. What about for the other tech industries as well that we touched upon today, like fashion tech or?
So the other techs are not, for example, fashion tech are definitely not covered by FINMA. Maybe where we can have access, I mean, when all of the FINMA will only regulate financial institutions and, how can I explain it quickly? And also some financial intermediaries, so when the money flows from one person to the others. Yeah. So FINMA will only be regulated with that. We see some other people from other sectors that come to us basically when they are treated with NFTs, that's those non-fungible tokens. And you have art pieces that are sold with NFTs. And then here, the NFTs are on the blockchains, they are considered as token. And depending on the setup of this NFT, then they might have some implication for the financial sector. But basically, that's how we get the others to come to us.
I was going to ask that actually. We talked to Jean-Baptiste about NFTs, and I think Snoop Dogg has NFTs worth 17 million, the most valuable 5 million. So the Port de France, might actually look at how do we actually safeguard NFTs and how secure is it?
I mean, NFT, usually if they just represent something that is real, you don't have to come to me. You can just sell it. Forget about paying me fees. Super. And so that's good.
Super, thank you. I am going to ask if there are any other questions in the room. We only have a few more minutes left, but Edouard. I was going to ask you actually how secure NFTs are, but maybe outside the practical example as well, you also talked a bit about the change management aspects, and we also talked about now having the experience and building off that experience, because what's interesting is you talked about a journey, right? And therefore, it's not just what you did in the first year, it's what you did in the 10 years. Taking that analogy for somebody who's taking the step now, right? Because we speak to a lot of financial institutions who are only now taking the step. Can they accelerate that? What would you advise for them to maybe achieve that same transition in maybe not such a
So to me, they need to have the right strategy at first and understand what they can do and can't do. We had the chance to be in a non-regulated environment, so I could move to the cloud very easily. So that's the first thing. So define a strategy, and then to me, I'm an IT guy, but I always worked as a business guy. So you have to take the business needs into account and not just be driven by technology. So, for example, we're talking a lot about metaverse that we'll discuss, I think, afterwards. Yes. We're actually doing events in the metaverse, but not because it's a new technology, but because during COVID there was a need to gather people together, and that's why we did those events in the metaverse. And this is also part of the change management, because people didn't know how to get together, so let's find new solutions. And let's adapt to those solutions, because you can't really stay in a Quest 2 for an hour. It's not very convenient. So you have to organize shorter events. You have to be more direct and change the way you organize things. So yeah. that's what I would advise.
Do you think you had to go through the journey to get to all the final steps, or do you think that you can actually jump? And a lot of people talk about moving, how Asia moved right onto mobile. They skipped the entire transition.
Yeah, today the technology is mature enough so that
Yeah.
you can jump to the last stage. You can put all your data in the cloud, secure them. It will just require quite a lot of work and a good team for that, and good consultants, because you can't do everything in house. And I had the chance to be accompanied with good people and to be successful. I didn't do that by myself. Good team and good consultants. Yeah.
Yeah, super. Thank you, André. And then I'm gonna have everyone think about actually one question as we're going. I'm sorry. Is, as we're going to do last, because we have entrepreneurs in the audience as well, is sort of what is your one trait that you've seen as successful entrepreneurs? I'm going to ask everyone around the table. But André, actually, as Edouard talked about, good consultants, right? Good partners actually supporting through the journey as well. Again, where would your advice be if you were talking to somebody who's just starting on the journey, not just moving to cloud, but also moving into new adoption of new solutions? Because I think that what COVID's also put is the ability to really accelerate a lot of that transformation. If anything, it demonstrated across industries who had technology debt and who needed to hop across the next, and make that leap to advance that technology debt and to move forward.
Yeah, so the first thing, very important, and as Edouard says, is to define the strategy you want, what is for, what you want to raise maybe your business to this new kind of technology. Is it a helper? Is it just because it's cool? Or really you have a need? And we were talking about the identity, the change management, the governance, the technology. It's a support, but that's the first step you have to think about is what is it for? And then you have the journey will start from this thinking, and then you will embrace the step by step, and you should go with a few steps for the beginning, and then you can accelerate, and then you can put more technology in, and that's very important also to have good people driving you in this kind of journey, because the mindset is very important. We are not talking really about technology. It's a culture. It's a change of the way the company work and the way of people we work in this company, and bringing them in this new world. Edouard was talking about the metaverse, but that's also the case in the cloud. Working differently means you need to change your habits from 20 or 25 to 30 years. And that's the most difficult. So it's very important to, from the beginning, to tell to the people they will change the way they work, but it's to have a better work at the end and be more convenient and be more agile and more fun.
I think Skylar was playing the game in the very beginning on what do you buy, what do you build, right, based on your strategy and how your strategy influences buy and build. And as we were hearing stories, right, Banca, I was curious if we played that story with every company and with different cycles of your life, right, which one will you buy and build as you go through? So,
I should say you have the technology part where it's the driver you can use to go through. Then you have also the, as we can also say, brand or the business objectives. Yeah. And at the end, you have the decision makers where they will give the rhythm about the change you want also to push inside this new kind of way to work. So I should say you never stop because you must keep it on the top of the, I should say the stair, really to be able to continue this journey.
Absolutely. I'm afraid we're out of time, so I'm going to ask Katja actually to have her one adjective on what makes a successful entrepreneur out of all the people you've seen doing, and then I'm going to invite Sanjeev Kumar to the stage.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, it has been, like I work a lot with the corporates every day. I work with startups. I was sitting on both sides, working, or three sides, working for government, working for corporate, and built my businesses on my own. And I think one of the traits for me was always focus, because there's so much excitement. There are amazing startups there are amazing things, but I can see that a lot with, for example, with corporates when we work with them, say, hey, which startups we should work with, and it's kind of really on the focus. Hey, I really like the comment, like I'm a nice guy, but I'm also a businessman. So on that level, I think it's the same way. In the end of the day, it's about what is the return of investment. And so it's really kind of finding the focus on, hey, these are the solutions that I'm really trying to solve. This is the match to the startups or to the innovation. And then it really goes also, I think, what we spoke about, what can be in Switzerland, opportunity and challenge in the same time. Does it fit in with legacy systems? Does it fit in the regulatory issues? And so for me, it has been really kind of one of the traits, even I would love to always do a million things, to really focus and to see, okay, where are we really going? But in the same time, not to be afraid to try many things, because usually one of them really works out always in the end, so.
Thank you very much. I think everyone here will be here for the FAO as well, so thank you very much for your participation. Thank you. Merci. And last but not least, I'd like to invite Sanjeev Kumar for our closing statement. I know many individuals are actually really interested in learning about the metaverse, and obviously a metaverse apps developer, an author, and a speaker about the topic as well, so really hearing it from the expert himself. So,
thank you.
Sanjeev.
So I think the latest trend of the day is that metaverse leads to the apero. So, how many people have heard about the metaverse already? Lots and lots, yeah. And maybe we can go to the next slide. Right. So there is a lot of hype around the metaverse, and some of you have not heard about the hype probably. I saw some hands not up. So it's a new technology. It's also called as the next version of internet. In the end, it's an immersive experience with technologies like augmented reality and virtual reality. So there is a lot of hype around the metaverse. You're hearing it in the news, and you're also tracking this trend. And the question is also, what is beyond the hype? So what you could do really today, and what customers or companies are doing today with metaverse or about metaverse. So that's something we can spend a few minutes about. And I think the previous speakers already mentioned that there are different use cases companies are already trying. Yeah, so it's in that sense a use case-based evolution and usage of the metaverse. And you can see it like a story. So there are two sides to the metaverse story. There's one side which is a lot of hype, like Fortnite and Decentraland and all of the different names you may hear about, and people talking about metaverse, and there's not a single definition. Everybody has a different view about metaverse, what it is. But in the end, there is clearly a technology which is different from what we had previously. So essentially, with augmented reality, virtual reality, these technologies, you are getting an immersive experience which was not possible earlier, and that means you can do things which were not possible earlier. And that's what we could potentially focus on to get the real value in the early days of the metaverse. So the hype is one part of the story. The second part of the story is the silent adoption. So this is already happening. And this is something which is also giving a hope to the businesses, because the mainstream companies generally don't want to buy into the hype. They want to wait for the hype to settle and then go into the adoption phase. And the good thing is that there are early trends emerging which indicate towards the adoption of the metaverse. And there are many reports, many surveys. One of the reports I quoted here is that when companies become aware about the metaverse, they like to do some use cases with it and try to do the adoption with some concrete use cases. Why do they do this? This is also very important. It's not for some fancy images or some avatars. That's not the driver here from a business perspective. There are different drivers, as you would expect. Productivity gain is one of the key drivers. So there are concrete use cases possible today where you could implement these technologies and achieve the productivity gain. You could really get the business value out of it by improvising some business processes depending on which industry you are in. You could solve some specific problems which were not possible earlier, as these technologies bring an immersive experience, like in a room or in a room like this we are in. You could fill in a hologram and you could have a machine, for instance, appearing in front of you. You could touch the machine. You could, do the activities with the parts of the machine. You could learn about the machine, and so on. This is just one example, and this you could do in real. You could do today, right? So that's the specific problems. Depending on the industry you are in, you might have some problems which can be solved only with the immersive technologies. Otherwise, with previous internet or the 2D approach, it was not possible. So with metaverse, you get a 3D approach to look at the things and a different level of interaction with the objects and with the information which was not possible earlier. The third one is staying ahead of the competition. So as a business, this is also an important criteria that you can get into the technology and learn about it and do something with it before it becomes very mainstream and your competition already catches up far ahead of you. So this is something which is one of the more important drivers for the businesses or the business scenarios where the companies want to learn about it, want to experiment with it, and want to be a little bit ahead in the game by making sense of what this could do for the business. Yeah, so these are the drivers we see for the businesses to think about and to learn about and to adopt the metaverse. Which industries are the first ones to embrace metaverse? This list is not the perfect one, but from my personal experience, I see these examples. So manufacturing has some very clear use cases. So the learning about complex systems in the manufacturing environment, or about the complex equipments. So for instance, learning about an aircraft engine, or learning about the engine of a rocket. This you could do far effectively in the metaverse or with the augmented reality, virtual reality, immersive technologies. You could touch and feel, you could do the interaction with the objects, and you could really feel like that particular machine is with you, in front of you at the same time. Yeah, so this changes the reality. This augments your reality, right? So that's one industry. The second one is financial services. Here, I could take an example of reinsurance and insurance industry particularly. And there are many different risk modeling scenarios they need to do, and they need to visualize the impact of the risk factors on the outcomes. And this visualization was this was only 2D, and this was not very effective to convey the message of the risk to the audience who needs to understand the outcomes from that risk implication. And this modeling, for instance, flooding, which could happen because of the climate change. What could happen to New York City, for instance, after 30 years if we don't do any intervention in the climate change factors? You could visualize that, and you could feel that like you are getting flooded with that kind of scenario. And that feeling or that immersive experience is not possible with pure internet today or the mobile devices we have. So this is another example. And then in retail, I think the previous speakers mentioned, or otherwise also you probably hear about virtual fashion or the augmented shopping experiences and so on. And last but not the least, so this is the third part of the metaverse story, beyond the hype, what you could start with today. So already previous speakers mentioned about digital onboarding. This is something which, now there are many different templates available, some examples, potentially you could learn from other businesses, or maybe some open source examples available to experiment with how you could do digital onboarding of the employees. And of course, the previous speakers mentioned that you have to also align the factors like how much is the attention span, what is the impact on the health, so have the training duration or the immersive experience duration also, which is more effective and manageable from attention, from health perspective, and then there is a learning outcome which you want. So second one is training and learning. So this is now used by different companies effectively, and then there are many case studies, I think, published by different big companies or medium-sized companies or small companies, that how they have done the training capsules or training modules in the metaverse with immersive experience, people coming together from different parts of the world and learning together at the same time. Virtual collaboration, this is very important use case for certain industries where you are at different locations, in different time zones and different places, but you could feel like you are at the same place. So for instance, I have a HoloLens 2 device at home, and you could really put it on, and you could feel that you are at a place where other people could also join with technology like Mesh and other technologies, and you could collaborate on a project in the metaverse, and there is a real, there is a factor of reality, so you kind of lose the difference between that reality, which is actually not there, and the actual reality. So it really enhances your reality, in that sense. So, and you could solve complex problems. And simulation, so I took an example of the insurance, reinsurance industry, but there are different examples where you want to convey certain messages and certain discussions in a way which you want people to feel that this is the real impact on you, or this is the real outcome which we want. And this you could convey very sharply in a better way with an immersive experience where where people feel like, oh, I can really interact with this particular object, or I can feel this, and I can sense that this is happening to me in reality. And this could be also a different way of communication in that sense, because in the business communications, we often need this kind of capability. So these are the use cases you could start pretty much today. So the hype has kind of landed with much more realistic possibilities. So that's the second part of the story I wanted to share with you, that beyond the hype, what you could do with the metaverse. Thank you very much.
Sanjeev Kumar, thank you very much.
Thank you.
In fact, I know a Swiss private bank who I think actually works with Microsoft, who has just created an innovation lab, the ability to visit the relationship manager with their client with documents, a bit like that movie, Minority Report. They just haven't figured out how to do the e-signature quite yet, but they can do everything else in the metaverse. Thank you very, very much, everyone, for actually a very participative agenda today. I just want to thank our sponsors, and Olivia will come up and thank our sponsors.
Thank you, Christine. First of all, I would like to, before closing the session, I would like to thank you very much, especially the sponsors and especially the speakers. But a big applause for Christian, please. Thank you, made a great job. Before starting the second part of the conference, I would like to invite you for the cocktail now. And we'll be here again in 30, 40 minutes. Thank you very much.